Hey everyone, Tom Anderson. This is day 26 of 100 Days of Thankfulness, and today we're talking about the importance of evidence and also the 10th miracle that occurred to me in 1993 when I accepted Jesus Christ. And today I'm also going to be talking about just why I'm so thankful for my brother, Charlie Anderson. So my younger brother, we're really close in age. We're like 16 months apart. So growing up, we've always had, we've just done everything together. Whenever, I had the privilege of actually being the best man at his wedding. And I'm so thankful to him that he would even care about me and love me enough to honor me in that way. And one of the things I talked about at his wedding was, how growing up together, it was always Tom and Chuck did this, Tom and Chuck did that. And, one time I even went out there and I took all my toys, and I was just curious because I had a bunch of electronic toys and stuff. And so I took the hammer, my dad's hammer, and I just smashed all my toys, and I left everything, just all over the front yard. And this was totally me, had nothing to do with my brother Chuck, but we both got spankings for that, and I apologized to him for that later, and he was gracious enough to forgive me for that. But I just wanted to kind of give you that background, that growing up we always had the same friends. We did everything together. We played video games together. We built forts out of blankets and pillows and chairs, and we once built this gigantic fort in the backyard, we pulled all the furniture outside, and it was huge. And that was another thing where we were kind of getting told on by our older sisters to our parents. So what I wanted to share with you too is this idea. This is almost a continuation of what I was talking about 10 days ago about the importance of miracles. Is as close as my brother Charlie Anderson and I are, we did reach a point where I think our belief systems have diverged, and we're still good friends and whatnot, but I think just with life and whatnot, we do spend less time with each other. We both have kids and we both have busy lives, and that just kind of happens. But the part about the belief system, and this is an area where I'm thankful for him too. Like we had a book club, actually my dad's book club. One of the first books we went through is a book called The Singularity is Near. And I was just voicing some of my objections to this concept of, science allows us to be able to detect, when electrical impulses fire in our brain, even to the point where there's just some amazing studies that have been done where now we can even control drones and stuff without moving anything. It's almost like we're just controlling physical, robots and everything with just our mental power. And so there's some really cool like science fiction stuff going out there, and this concept of the singularity is near is very, it's this real concept, but it really is kind of where reality and science fiction meet. And it's this idea that at some point we can even transfer our consciousness into machines, and that was kind of the area that I was starting to throw, I'm not sure that's real, because even though we can detect these electrical impulses, now we're getting into an area where we're talking about actually transferring our consciousness into a computer or a machine. And science is unable currently to detect consciousness. Yeah, we can see the electrical impulses, but that's a pretty big step to actually be able to model the human brain in a robot or a machine or a computer or anything like that. We started actually getting a little bit philosophical with our discussion, and we started talking about consciousness and what it is. And to me, it's synonymous with the soul. And so we started almost even getting a bit religious with our discussions. And, at one point, I was even sharing with him how I thought it was interesting how when I had my wisdom teeth out, that I experienced almost like traveling forward in time because of, the drugs that they used to put me under. I felt like several hours had just gone by in just an instant. And to which he replied, and I'm thankful for this reply, because it's a very insightful. He was saying, well, to me, that's evidence that you don't have a soul. And so when I talk about the importance of evidence, it gets into this area of belief, right? So it's not, a lot of people think that it's, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but the reality is you really can't, right? I could choose to believe that I'm an elephant, but, I can pretend I am, but, I'm nothing that I really say or do is really going to, I'm not going to be able to convince myself that that's true. In the same regard, you can pretend to be a Christian, but if you don't really believe in God, then, and this is where I bring my brother Charlie into it, is, he's always been very honest in that regard, and I just have the utmost respect for him, for being that way, and for some of the conversations we've had. And so I think it is important to just stay true to your beliefs. Don't become hypocritical. Share, why you believe what you believe, and you can have some really good conversations. And it doesn't have to ruin your relationships with the people that you love the most just because you have a different set of beliefs. I realize that can certainly make things more tense when you have differences of opinion about different things, but it doesn't have to ruin the relationship when you can at least have, what I talked about yesterday. You can have that respect for each other. And part of that respect is just realizing the person you're talking to that believes differently from you, they really don't. They really don't have the ability to just change their mind. Okay, it takes a lot more. It took a lot more for me. It took 7 years of me searching before I came around to the idea of accepting Jesus Christ. So it's not something that's just going to happen from a conversation. It's going to actually involve, in my case, it took 12 miracles. So the 10th miracle that I experienced, and here's where I talk about evidence. So evidence isn't just science, okay? Certainly there's scientific evidence, both for and against the reality of God. If I were to do, I don't know that I'm going to do this, but, I had thought, if I ever do another 100 days of something, maybe what I do is 100 days of scientific evidence both for and against God, because I don't think it would be fair, sort of what I talked about on day 16 with miracles. I don't think it would be fair to even deviate from a scientific perspective, kind of Charles Darwin's original idea, which is if you want to know the truth about something, it's important to look at both sides. So I almost think if I did do something like that, I would probably, on one day, maybe on every odd day, I would choose, the evidence for God, and on every even day I do the evidence against God, because what I've seen through my research is there's both. There really is. There's scientific evidence, but that's not the only form of evidence. There's also, I talked about what I had learned through logic and through philosophy, and that, and even religion. So there's sort of that philosophical, religious, using logic, bringing logic into the conversation. You can come to certain conclusions and you can rule out other things. So there's certainly that evidence that can be arrived at just through logic alone, and that would be more like philosophical and religious evidence. But then I think there's the third area, which is what I've been focusing on with these 12 miracles, which is simply our experiences. We know that a consciousness exists simply because we experience a consciousness. And what that is in philosophical terms is if we were to say, if I were to say to you that tonight you and I are going to go to sleep, and I'm going to wake up as you and you're going to wake up as me, and we're not going to know the difference, because we're going to still have the memory, our memories are going to swap along with our bodies, and we're going to have no idea that, we just switched consciousness. From a scientific perspective, that whole idea sounds bizarre, and I'm not saying that happens, but from a scientific perspective, there's nothing you can really do to refute that, because science cannot detect consciousness, yet we experience it every day. So that experience is evidence for us, and I feel it's one of the most powerful forms of evidence, is that experiential evidence of consciousness, that consciousness exists, and therefore a soul exists. My brother Charlie would have a very different opinion, I'm sure, on this, and if I were to put him on camera, he would probably have he's brilliant, he's super smart. I'm sure he'd have a very good answer to that. But I think, that being said, I will share with you what I experienced, and again, what I mentioned yesterday is Miracles 9, 10, 11. They are the most, the weirdest experiences I've experienced with God. So now, when I shared about what I had learned from Michael A. about the Holy Spirit, one of the things that he described is, when we receive a spiritual gift, sometimes there's a demonstration of that gift, and that demonstration is God acting in a supernatural way. Probably the most common way that is talked about, and is even, causes divisions among various denominations, is this concept of speaking in tongues. If someone starts speaking in tongues, that's the outward sign that someone has received the Holy Spirit. But my experience was very different from that. I did not speak in tongues, but what I did experience, and I feel like he actually had us take when we went through Alpha, we went and filled out this, hundreds of questions, asking us about various things in order to figure out what is your spiritual gift. And for me, the way I answered the questions, it came back like 100%. Like I answered every question in such a way that it said, your strongest gift is definitely faith. And I believe the reason my strongest gift is faith, and the demonstration of that faith, is what I'm about to describe now. Sorry it took so long to get to that point. What happened now was, I mentioned I received the Holy Spirit. It's now been several months. I've been having the tears of joy every Sunday, going to church, worship. I was experiencing all the time. Now, there was another Amway function that was coming up 3 months later, and I was eagerly anticipating, because I had received the Holy Spirit at the last one. I was thinking, wow, I wonder what's going to happen at this next one. And so I was thinking, wow, I'm probably going to, keep experiencing what I've been, experiencing just at church, but maybe even more so. And so I was kind of looking forward to this Sunday service. And sure enough, they offered another Sunday service for people that were traveling, and I attended that. And there were, it was a very similar experience for those around me, because they had people coming up front, giving their life to Christ for the first time. I witnessed several others who were having those same tears of joy and coming forward. And I was witnessing all this and feeling absolutely nothing. And what was going on in my mind was, did I do something wrong? Remember, I was still kind of in this legalistic mode of, did I do something wrong, God? Did I do something to offend you? What's going on here that I'm not feeling your presence the way everyone around me clearly is? And, but I just I was still happy for what was going on for the people around me. And there was one woman in particular that was coming from, behind me. She was walking forward past all the tables, and she was just clearly just weeping and walking forward to give her life to Christ. And my heart went out to her, but I wasn't feeling anything. I wasn't weeping. And as she passed by me, just to encourage her, I just, set my hand on her shoulder as she passed by to, kind of just as a way to say, you're doing a good thing. And the moment my hand touched her shoulder, I experienced, and I'm not describing a slight tingling sensation, I'm talking about, I felt it's almost like if you've ever been, sort of touched something where you're working with electrical wiring and you get a bit of a big shock, not to the point where you're just like, I can't let go, but, you felt that shock before. That's what I was feeling. I was feeling like this, it wasn't completely unpleasant, but it was a very strong, very, it was like this electrical charge from my hand that touched her shoulder. And it didn't move very fast. It was hanging out there, and it was slowly moving up my arm. And when I say slowly, it was about, I would say, from my hand up to my head, it took about 10 seconds to get there. And 10 seconds sounds fast, but really, if you look at a stopwatch, 10 seconds is, that's pretty slow. It's obvious enough to be moving, but it takes a while to go from here to here. And when it reached my head, again, I felt that joy. I felt the tears coming down, and then I was just so thankful to God, because I felt like this was above and beyond anything I had ever experienced before, just to show that that physical manifestation of the Holy Spirit in me. And I don't know anyone else that, any other Christian that has experienced that same sensation. The closest would be a friend of mine that felt like that similar electric in her hands, where she actually was able to heal herself. And so I realize I'm getting really weird here, but I believe this is true. I do believe the Holy Spirit has the power to do all these things. And for me, this was a demonstration of faith, because it was God answering my question from several months earlier about, God, if you're real, please reveal yourself to me. He was doing for me what I needed the most. Just like Thomas, doubting Thomas in the Bible, he said to me, because he was hearing all these reports about Jesus risen from the dead, he said, unless I feel his wound, unless I feel his side and I see the holes in his hands, unless I can actually touch him, I can't believe. And when Jesus showed up, and they had the door locked, and then Jesus entered the room, got past the locked door, and he approached Thomas. Thomas was like, he was already believing, but Jesus insisted, here, touch me here, and Jesus was doing for Thomas what Thomas needed the most. He just like I needed to know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, I needed to know that God was real. That's what he did for Thomas in the Bible. And I think so much of us are like that, and there is evidence out there. But the way you get to that point isn't just by deciding one day that I'm going to believe it. It's you have to search. You have to be open to the possibility of God revealing himself to you, and accepting God for who he is on his terms and not necessarily your own. So once again, I just want to say that I'm so thankful for my brother, Charlie Anderson. He challenges me in so many ways that I hope to continue this, this great relationship we have, and I will always respect him for his beliefs, and I'm not necessarily looking to change his beliefs, because I realize I can't. Only God can do that. So thanks once again.